Does this look familiar? Those pathetic, pale little strings, desperately reaching for the window. The kind of seedlings you're almost embarrassed to call starts. And yet, you followed the instructions exactly. What if I told you that 90% of your success depends not on expensive grow lights or fancy fertilizers, but on one simple action in the first few hours of the seedling's life? Today, I'm going to share my tried and true method, perfected over years, that guarantees your starts will always be strong, stocky, and squat. No magic involved, just solid horticulture and an understanding of plant physiology. Watch this video until the end, and I promise you'll forget all about leggy seedlings, and every year you'll harvest a bounty that makes all your neighbours jealous. By the way, drop a comment right now and tell me which crop tends to get leggy for you the most. Tomatoes, peppers. Let's see who the biggest stretcher is in the bunch. Before we get to the specific steps, let's take a quick peek inside the plant's mind. Why do they stretch in the first place? This process has a scientific name, etiolation. In nature, if a seed sprouts in the shade, its main mission is to reach the sun as fast as possible. Otherwise, it dies. So the sprout throws all its energy into stem elongation, ignoring root and leaf development. We actually create these exact conditions indoors. A hot radiator under the windowsill, short daylight hours, all of this signals to the plant. Danger, we're in the shade. Gotta grow up fast. Our goal, however, is to trick this ancient programming. From the very beginning, we need to make the seedling think that it has plenty of sun and there's no need to rush. Instead of stretching up, it will direct all that energy toward developing a massive root system and a thick, sturdy stem. Forget pampering your seedlings like they're on vacation. Our path is one of sensible Spartan discipline. Right, let's start with the potting mix, the soil itself. This is where most people make their first major mistake. A lot of growers grab the richest soil from their garden or buy heavy, dense topsoil, thinking they're giving the seedlings a boost. But actually, you're doing them a huge disservice. When you start seeds, the tiny seedling doesn't need much fertilizer. The seed itself already holds enough energy reserves for the initial phase of growth. An excess of nutrients in the soil, especially nitrogen, forces rapid top growth, resulting in that tall, thin, leggy stem we want to avoid. We absolutely do not want that. The perfect seed starting mix must, first and foremost, be lightweight, loose, and airy. Developing roots desperately need oxygen to thrive. Your base component should be neutralized peat moss or coir. To this, you must add amendments or aerators, like perlite or vermiculite. These don't just lighten the mix, they also absorb excess water and then slowly release it back to the roots, preventing both overwatering and drying out. The general ratio is 3 parts base mix to 1 part aerator. Absolutely no manure or compost at this stage. The goal is a lean, nutrient-poor mix. This forces the plant to actively seek out nutrients and focus on building strong, powerful roots, rather than wasting energy on a long, weak stem. The next step is getting your seeds ready. Of course, you could just toss them straight into the dirt, but if you want guaranteed results and strong, healthy seedlings, it's worth taking a little extra time. First up, calibration. This is often called the float test. Dissolve 1 teaspoon of salt in a glass of water, then add your seeds. After 10 or 15 minutes, all the good, viable seeds will sink to the bottom. Any that are empty, shriveled, or non-viable will remain floating on top. Just toss those floaters. They won't germinate anyway. Second, disinfection or sanitizing. The surface of seeds often harbours fungal pathogens that are just waiting to destroy your young seedlings. Soaking seeds in potassium permanganate is completely outdated. We now have much safer and more effective modern alternatives such as chlorhexidine, which you can find at any drugstore. Simply soak your seeds for 20 to 30 minutes and you're good to go. 3% hydrogen peroxide also works beautifully for this purpose. Now, a word of caution regarding popular growth stimulants. If your seeds are fresh and high quality, They absolutely do not need any added stimulant. In fact, using them might backfire, causing the seedling to burn through its vital internal energy reserves too quickly. Growth stimulants are only truly justified when dealing with old, dormant, or poor quality seeds that you are unsure about. Let's move on to containers. This might seem minor, but choosing the right pot is crucial for the health of your root system. The biggest mistake is starting seeds in containers that are too large. When a tiny root is placed in a big volume of soil, it simply can't absorb all the available moisture. The soil becomes waterlogged, cutting off oxygen supply to the roots, which inevitably leads to rot. The ideal starting volume is between 100 and 200 millilitres. You can use standard plastic cups, specialised cell trays, or biodegradable peat pots. I personally prefer clear plastic cups. They give you a perfect visual confirmation of root development and allow you to see if the soil near the base is drying out. Every single container must have drainage holes. If they don't, you need to create them yourself, ideally using a hot nail or an awl. Water pooling around the roots is a guaranteed path to damping off disease and the death of your entire batch of seedlings. Don't be lazy. Make sure that excess water can drain freely. This is far more crucial than the specific brand of potting mix or even the seed variety you choose. Remember, healthy roots are the absolute foundation of successful growth, and creating the perfect environment for them is our top priority. Seed planting depth is yet another crucial factor. Here, we follow the gardener's golden rule. The planting depth should be roughly 3 times the diameter of the seed itself. For very fine seeds such as petunias or lobelias, we're talking about just 1 or 2 millimeters. These are often not covered with soil at all. You simply scatter them on the surface and press them down gently. For slightly larger seeds like tomatoes or peppers, aim for about 1 centimeter. And for the larger seeds such as cucumbers or squash, you're looking at 1.5 to 2 centimeters. What happens when we violate this simple rule? If you sow too shallowly, the seed can quickly dry out and fail to germinate entirely. Alternatively, the emerging sprout won't be able to anchor itself properly and shed the seed coat, what we often call the helmet. If you sow too deeply, however, the sprout might simply run out of energy before it even reaches the surface. It will exhaust its entire nutrient reserve on that struggle, and if it does emerge, it will be weak, thin, and pale. This seedling is already predisposed to etiolation, or stretching out. So, take your time. Carefully assess the size of your seeds and place them at the correct, measured depth. This simple step will save you a tremendous amount of hassle and stress down the line. Once we've sown the seeds at the correct depth, our next job is to create the absolute perfect conditions for them to sprout. This is the stage where we set up that 5-star resort I mentioned earlier. Seeds need 2 things to wake up: warmth and stable humidity. To achieve this, we cover our containers with a clear lid, plastic wrap, or simply place them inside a plastic bag. This creates a mini greenhouse effect. The humidity inside will approach 100%, which prevents the surface of the soil from drying out. Now for the most important part, temperature. The optimal temperature range for the germination of most crops is 25 to 28 degrees Celsius. You can place your containers close to a radiator or heat source, but never directly on it. We don't want to cook the seeds. Regularly, once per day, you need to open the mini greenhouse for 5 to 10 minutes for ventilation to prevent mold growth. Crucially, at this stage, the seeds do not need light at all. They could be sitting in a dark closet. Warmth is the only priority right now. And this brings us to the pivotal moment, the turning point, where the majority of people make a fatal mistake. Pay close attention, because this is the single most important secret in this entire video. This is the crucial moment that separates strong, sturdy seedlings from weak, leggy runts. This is what you absolutely must do within the first few hours of germination. We check our trays every day, and the moment we see those very first hooks or loops, not fully formed sprouts, but the tiny bits just barely peeking out of the soil, we have to act immediately. At this exact point, We must drastically and fundamentally change their growing environment. Their pampered vacation is officially over. First, immediately remove the plastic wrap or humidity dome. Second, move the container to the brightest possible location. And third, the most critical step, we sharply drop the temperature. The daytime temperature should be around 16 to 18 degrees Celsius, and the nighttime temperature must be even lower, ideally around 14 to 15 degrees Celsius. For the tiny sprout, this is a massive shock. It was just living in a warm, humid paradise, and now it's hit with bright light and a sudden cold snap. This precise stress completely flips its internal developmental programming. The signal that says, "I must stretch urgently upwards," is cancelled. Instead, the survival program kicks in. Anchor down and thrive. The plant immediately stops focusing on its above-ground growth and reroutes all its energy into developing a massive, robust root system. It is during these initial 3 to 5 critical days that you lay the true foundation for stocky, healthy seedlings. Let's dive deeper into lighting. The moment those tiny loops of seedlings emerge, light instantly becomes the single most critical factor. Standard window light, especially during February or March, is simply inadequate. Without supplemental lighting, growing robust, high-quality seedlings is nearly impossible. For the first 3 or 4 days after germination, I highly recommend providing continuous 24-hour light. This acts as a calculated stressor, preventing the seedling from becoming weak and leggy. After that initial period, you can switch the schedule to 14 to 16 hours per day. Now, what kind of lights should you use? Forget the old incandescent bulbs. They produce far more heat than light, which only encourages the seedlings to stretch out. The best choice today is full-spectrum LED grow lights. They provide the perfect balance of blue and red light, crucial for plant health. The blue spectrum drives root system development and stem thickening, while the red spectrum powers photosynthesis and promotes vigorous leaf growth. You must position the light source directly above your plants, at a height of 15 to 20 centimeters, about 6 to 8 inches. Don't place it to the side or at an angle. It must be directly overhead, otherwise your seedlings will inevitably stretch horizontally toward the light. We've already discussed the need to reduce the overall temperature, but there's another clever trick, creating a significant difference between daytime and nighttime temperatures. In nature, it's always cooler at night than during the day, and plants are genetically adapted to this rhythm. At night, photosynthesis slows down, but respiration continues. During respiration, plants use up the nutrients and sugars they stored during the day. If the nighttime temperature stays as high as the day temperature, the plant respires too intensely and burns through most of the sugars it produced under the light. As a result, there isn't enough energy left over to build strong cells, and the stem grows long, weak, and leggy. However, if we lower the night temperature to 12 to 14 degrees Celsius, the respiration process slows down significantly. The plant uses less energy, saving more nutrients to build reserves and develop a sturdy, powerful stem. So, how do you achieve this in an apartment environment? You can slightly open a window or vent overnight, use a sheet of plastic to separate the windowsill area from the warmer room air, or simply move your seedlings onto a glassed-in balcony if it maintains the correct temperature range. A drop of 4 to 6 degrees Celsius between day and night really works wonders. Let's talk about watering now. This is the second most common way to kill off your seedlings, right after getting the temperature wrong. The golden rule here is simple. Underwatering is always safer than overwatering. Young seedling roots are still quite delicate and need plenty of oxygen. If the soil is constantly soggy, like a swamp, the water displaces the oxygen, causing the roots to essentially suffocate and rot. This creates the perfect conditions for damping off, a fungal disease that attacks the stem right at the soil line, causing your young plants to collapse. So, how do you water properly? First, wait until the top half-inch of soil feels dry. It's easy to check this just by sticking your finger in. Second, don't water directly against the stem. Instead, Apply the water along the edge of the container. This encourages the roots to stretch outwards in search of moisture, which promotes stronger, healthier growth. Third, use only a small amount of water. If you're using a standard small starter cup, just 1 or 2 tablespoons is usually plenty. It's much better to water frequently with small amounts than to drench them all at once. The most convenient tool for watering tiny seedlings is a large bulb baster, a turkey syringe, or a simple needleless medical syringe. These tools let you accurately measure the dose and direct the stream exactly where you need it, without washing away or disturbing the soil. Water quality matters too. Never water your seedlings using cold water straight from the tap. For those delicate young roots, it's essentially an ice bath and a major shock. The plant will go into shock, and its growth can stall for days afterward. The water should be allowed to settle, ideally reaching room temperature, or even better, being a couple of degrees warmer. Simply pour the water into a container or bottle and let it stand for 24 hours right next to your setup. This period allows the chlorine to dissipate, and the water temperature will naturally match the ambient air. Some experienced gardeners prefer using collected rainwater or melted snow, often referring to it as living water. This makes sense as it is naturally softer than tap water. However, in urban or industrial environments, collecting this water isn't always safe due to atmospheric contaminants. That's why properly aged tap water is a simple and reliable option for most people. The main rule to remember is this: no rushing and absolutely no cold water. Taking care of the roots now is taking care of your future harvest. Warm water helps them absorb nutrients more efficiently and promotes faster, healthier development. Even if you water your seedlings perfectly, the risk of damping off is always present. This sneaky, destructive fungus lies dormant in the soil, just waiting for its opportunity. The moment favourable conditions arise, usually overwatering combined with stagnant air, it instantly attacks weakened young plants. That is why prevention is critical. First, as mentioned, avoid overwatering at all costs. Second, ensure excellent ventilation. Do not crowd your seedling containers together. Air needs to circulate freely between them. Periodically introduce a light cross breeze or draft, but avoid extremes. You don't want to chill the young plants. A superb preventive technique is surface mulching. After watering, sprinkle a thin layer, about 2 to 3 millimeters, of oven-sterilized river sand or vermiculite over the soil. These materials dry out quickly, preventing moisture from lingering around the root crown, which is the plant's most vulnerable spot. Additionally, they create an inhospitable environment for fungal development. If you do notice that one of your seedlings is starting to wilt, and its stem has darkened and narrowed at the base, the telltale sign, remove it immediately along with the surrounding soil. Treat the resulting hole by dusting it heavily with wood ash or crushed charcoal. This immediate action will help halt the spread of the disease. Now let's talk about a little trick that seems like magic but is actually just pure science. You need to pet your seedlings. Seriously, you heard correctly. Every day, a few times a day, gently brush your hand across the tops of the plants, giving them a slight wiggle. Why do this? In the wild, plants are constantly buffeted by the wind. In response to this mechanical stress, they produce specific chemicals in the stems that make them thicker and tougher. The plant is essentially preparing itself to withstand the elements. This phenomenon is called thigmotropism. But on a calm windowsill indoors, our pampered seedlings are completely deprived of this necessary natural stimulus. That's why we need to manually simulate the wind. Just 1 or 2 minutes of this daily training is all it takes, and you will quickly notice the stems becoming noticeably thicker and more robust. Beyond manually petting them, you can also use a small fan. Direct the fan toward your seedlings for 10 to 15 minutes, a couple of times a day. This light breeze won't just harden the stems, it also significantly improves air circulation, which is an excellent way to prevent fungal diseases. So go ahead and give your seedlings a bit of tough love. A little bit of healthy stress is exactly what they need to thrive. If you're growing seedlings on a windowsill, even if you use supplemental lighting, there's one crucial step you absolutely cannot skip. Plants naturally stretch toward the main light source, in our case, the window. If your container stays in the exact same spot, all your sprouts will grow crooked, leaning severely to one side. This isn't just unsightly, it's actually detrimental to the plant. The stem curves, the plant wastes unnecessary energy trying to straighten itself, and its overall development becomes uneven. The solution is extremely simple. You need to regularly, ideally daily, rotate your seedling container 180 degrees. One day they face the window, the next they face the room. This simple maneuver forces the plants to constantly adjust their growth direction, resulting in a straight, vertical stem. Think of this as another element of plant gymnastics that forces the seedling to work and become stronger. It might seem like a minor detail, but overall success in gardening is built upon these small details. Make it a habit to rotate your seedlings every morning when you check on them. It will take only a few seconds, and the visible results will be well worth the effort. The question of the initial feeding is a crucial one. New growers often rush to fertilise their seedlings, subscribing to the belief that the earlier they start, the better. This is a common and serious mistake. As we know, seeds contain an internal nutrient supply, and a quality seed starting mix holds sufficient nutrients for the first 2 or 3 weeks of growth. Early fertilisation, especially with high nitrogen fertilisers, will cause the same issue as an overly rich soil. Rapid growth of thin, weak green mass, which leads to stretching and legginess. So, when exactly should you start feeding them? Focus less on the calendar date and more on the physical appearance of your plants. The clear signal for the first feeding is the emergence of 2 or 3 true leaves. Remember, don't confuse these with the initial cotyledons that appear first. By this stage, the plant has usually strengthened sufficiently and has used up its internal nutrient reserves. And what should you use for the feed? At this early stage, nitrogen is not what we need. We are looking for phosphorus and potassium. Phosphorus is essential for developing a powerful root system, while potassium is responsible for overall immunity and strengthening the cell walls. Ideally, you should use a complete seedling fertilizer that has minimal nitrogen content but high levels of phosphorus and potassium. Crucial tip: always use half the dosage recommended by the manufacturer. It is far better to underfeed your seedlings than risk burning their delicate roots. Pricking out or transplanting seedlings into their own, more spacious containers is a necessary procedure for the majority of plants. It's essential because it gives each young plant enough room for its roots and leaves to develop properly. So, when is the right time to do this? As always, you need to observe the plant itself. The optimal stage for potting up is when the seedling has developed 2 or 3 true leaves. At this point, the root system is robust enough to handle the move, but it hasn't yet become severely tangled with the roots of its neighbours. You definitely shouldn't put off this task. When seedlings are too crowded, they begin competing intensely for light and nutrients, which inevitably causes them to stretch out and become leggy. How do you transplant seedlings correctly? An hour or 2 before you start, water your trays thoroughly. This ensures the soil clings together so the root ball doesn't crumble. Gently lift each seedling, taking care to cause minimal damage to the roots. There's a common myth that you should pinch off the central taproot to stimulate the growth of side roots. While this is acceptable for tomatoes, you must avoid it for peppers and eggplants, as they tolerate root damage very poorly. After transplanting a seedling into its new pot, carefully firm the soil around the stem and water it again. Potting up is always a shock, but it's a necessary, healthy stress. The plant might pause its growth for a few days immediately afterward, but once it recovers, it will take off with renewed vigour. Even after you've pricked them out, it's crucial to ensure your seedlings aren't cramped. As they grow, the leaves of neighbouring plants will inevitably start touching and shading each other. This sends a clear signal to the plants. Competition! We need to urgently stretch toward the light, which is exactly what causes legginess. To prevent this, give those pots plenty of breathing room. Yes, it will take up more space on your windowsill, but trust me, the results are worth the effort. Every single plant needs to receive sufficient light from all sides. Their leaves should never be lying on top of one another. If you notice your seedlings starting to get dense again, simply slide those containers further apart. This simple trick significantly slows down vertical growth and encourages strong, side shoot development. Remember that every plant requires its own personal space. Overcrowded plantings don't just lead to competition for light, they also result in poor air circulation, which dramatically increases the risk of fungal diseases. It is far better to grow 10 strong, stocky plants than 20 weak, spindly ones. Don't be greedy with space. Give your seedlings the freedom they need, and they will reward you with vigorous growth and a fantastic future harvest. Sometimes, despite all our best efforts, seedlings still start getting leggy. This often happens, for example, due to prolonged periods of cloudy or overcast weather. In situations like these, we can turn to specialized products known as plant growth regulators or retardants. The most well-known brand is often called Athlete. What exactly does it do? It's crucial to understand that it is neither a fertilizer nor a growth stimulant. It is a growth inhibitor. It temporarily blocks the production of the hormone responsible for stem elongation. As a result, all the plant's energy is redirected toward thickening the stem, encouraging lateral shoot growth, and, most importantly, developing a strong root system. The seedlings become compact, stocky, and develop deep, dark green leaves. However, these powerful products must be used judiciously. First and foremost, strictly follow the instructions. Overdosing can severely stunt the plant's overall development. Secondly, only use them as a last resort when other methods have failed. Think of it as a kind of chemical pruning. It is always better to provide the correct growing environment than to fix problems with chemicals later on. Nevertheless, it is a valuable tool to know about. For certain crops, like petunias, which are notoriously prone to stretching, Athlete can be a lifesaver, helping to form a beautiful, bushy plant. Once your seedlings are robust and well established, with just 2 or 3 weeks left until planting time, you must begin the crucial process of hardening them off. Our indoor-grown plants, accustomed to stable conditions, are completely unprepared for the erratic weather outside. Direct sun, wind, and wild swings in temperature between day and night can result in fatal shock. To prevent this trauma, they must be gradually acclimated to life outdoors. Start small and slow. On a warm, calm day, place your seedlings outside, on a balcony or in the garden, for just 15 or 20 minutes, making sure they stay in full shade. The next day, increase the time to 40 minutes. Gradually introduce them to direct sunlight, starting with the gentle morning or late afternoon rays when the sun isn't scorching. Continue to extend the time they spend outside daily. After about 10 days to 2 weeks, your seedlings should be able to handle being outside all day. Then, a few days before you plant them out, you can leave them overnight, provided there is absolutely no threat of frost. Properly hardened seedlings often develop a darker, sometimes purplish hue on their stems and leaves. These plants will easily survive transplanting, won't suffer sun scald, and will immediately jumpstart their growth once they hit the soil. We often overlook another crucial factor: air humidity. In our homes, especially during the peak heating season, the air becomes incredibly dry. Hot, dry air rising from the radiators flows over the windowsill, rapidly dehydrating our plants. To compensate for this moisture loss, the plant begins to transpire even more aggressively through its leaves. This leads to a loss of turgor, wilting, and overall stress. Furthermore, dry air is the perfect breeding ground for pests like spider mites. So what should you do? The easiest solution is to regularly mist your seedlings with warm water using a spray bottle. It's best to do this in the morning, allowing the leaves ample time to dry completely before nightfall. You can also place small containers of water near your seedlings. As the water evaporates, it naturally raises the local humidity level. A highly effective method is to cover the radiator directly beneath the windowsill with a wet towel. This serves a dual purpose. It lowers the localized temperature and dramatically boosts humidity. Maintaining a healthy environment around your plants is just as critical as managing what happens in the pot. Monitoring and controlling humidity is one more small yet crucial step towards achieving great results. And now for the 20th and final tip, and arguably the most important one for the future: start a gardener's journal. This can be anything from a simple notebook to notes saved on your phone. Document absolutely everything. When you sowed the seeds, the specific variety, the soil mix you used, when the seedlings emerged, when you transplanted them, and what you fed them. Note your successes and, perhaps even more importantly, record your mistakes. Did your pepper seedlings get leggy this year? Write it down and analyse what went wrong. Did you start them too early? Was the temperature too high? Next year, armed with that knowledge, you won't make that mistake again. Memory is unreliable, but your written records will stick around. In just a few years, you will have created your own invaluable encyclopedia of knowledge based entirely on your personal experience. You'll know exactly which varieties thrive best in your specific conditions, which methods work, and which ones simply don't. This transforms the often chaotic process of starting seedlings into a logical, manageable system. Analysing and correcting mistakes is the key to consistent success, guaranteeing that your plants will get better and better every single year. So let's wrap things up. The secret to growing strong, sturdy seedlings isn't a magic bullet, it's a comprehensive, holistic approach. We started with the right, lean potting mix, prepped our seeds, and then, this is the crucial part, we subjected our young seedlings to Spartan conditions right after germination, intense light and cooler temperatures. We learned how to water correctly, avoided rushing the fertilization process, and even gave our seedlings a gentle brushing to encourage lateral growth rather than them shooting straight up. Each of these 20 steps is a building block in the foundation of your future bumper harvest. The biggest shift in mindset you need to make is to stop coddling your seedlings. Don't give them 5-star resort treatment. A little bit of stress, things like cool air, moderate watering, and even that gentle physical touch, forces the plant to mobilize all its resources, developing a robust root system and a thick stem just to survive. That's how we transform a pampered princess into a tough, resilient plant, ready to face any challenge once it's transplanted outside. Thank you so much for sticking around and watching this video all the way to the end. I truly hope these tips were helpful. If they were, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any new episodes. And by clicking the notification bell, you'll be the first to know when a fresh video goes live. Now for the main question, which of these 20 tips was the biggest revelation for you? Or perhaps you have your own secret trick for growing stocky, compact seedlings that you're willing to share. Be sure to write about it in the comments below. Let's exchange knowledge and experience.